In today's economy, more people than ever are looking to buy and sell businesses. But how do you do it? Welcome to the Deal Board, presented by Transworld Business Advisors. Straight talk about real deals and real people. Listen to stories, interviews, and expert advice to help your business sale, merger, or acquisition process. Now, here are your business exit experts, Andy and Jessica.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And we have a great show for you today. We are talking about the very touchy subject of family transfers.
Yeah, family business transfers happen a lot. I mean, most small businesses, Main Street businesses, especially businesses we deal with, are family operations, husband and wife teams, father and son. They become a whole family affair sometimes.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot. And listen, we are a part of a family business at United Franchise Group. I've been, my family history in the guitar business was a multi-generational guitar business that eventually folded, which, you know, really on a look back, you got to wonder if they were not the greatest business people, but, you know, more craftsmen. And those issues always come up when you're talking about multi-generational family businesses, whether or not they should be transferred to the next generation.
Right. And that's what we're talking about today. We have a, few brave people that are coming on and talking about their family business transfers.
Without worrying about whether or not they're going to get into another fight. And it's a very, again, I said it was a touchy subject, but it's very emotional. There's a lot at stake. And, Transworld is here to help you. We have been through this multiple times. We've seen it get very heated. We have a few good guests today, right?
Yeah, we have some great guests today. Actually, Aaron Fox, who's also the owner of Transworld North Boston now, but he comes on and he talks about his multi-generational business that he did with his father. Very, very successful business. Aaron worked in the business for a few years before they decided to sell. So he talks about that journey of selling, of working with the buyers. His dad's still kind of involved in the deal.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting story. It's also a very interesting business, very niche business. Another one of those where you never know. You can make $1 million a million different ways, right?
Yeah, and he didn't want to be involved. I mean, at the end of the day, he's so happy that he didn't take over that family business, and that's not always the case. You interview Peter Berg about one of our most famous family transfer businesses. It was a very large business. Multiple family members involved, but there were multiple family members not involved. And the parents were super concerned with how they would split up that asset and whether or not the kids could afford the asset.
Right. I think that's the key is sometimes in these generation transfers, sometimes the kids don't want the business. And we're seeing we're seeing that a lot more with the baby boomer to millennial generations. There's just a lot different dynamics going on with culture and values and what they want for their lives. But also, sometimes the kids can't afford the business, and it's better for everyone, including that second or third generation, that the business is sold or transferred to a third party. So there's a lot of different dynamics going on. So we talked to a lot of business owners that, they have a business. They're like, oh, well, I've got it lined up. My son, my daughter-in-law is going to take over. But sometimes it's worth getting an outside opinion and seeing if that's really the best fit and the best strategy for the entire family.
Hey, listen, we've been known to sit down with the family members themselves and talk to them without the parents in the room, whether or not they wanted to be in charge. I had a paper distribution business, an office supply business, where the parents, very successful, drove S-Class Mercedes that were paid for through the business, multi-$100,000 business, probably almost $500,000 worth of profits to both mom and dad. And the son was a struggling lawyer, not struggling, but a lawyer up in Manhattan, probably making about $150,000 a year, which is struggling in New York City. Yeah. And he was a young person, had a young family. And it was really, he said no to his mom and dad. And I got on the phone with him and I said, listen, you need to think about this. This is a business that will make you $500,000 a year today. And you are up in New York City trying to make partner, working 500 hours a week, and your parents are willing to give you this business. And before I go sell it, and you need to think twice. And he thought about it and he moved down and he took over the business. And, we have cases where that shouldn't have happened, where business owners had the business, passed it along to the kids, and it didn't go well.
Yeah, I mean, there's the old joke that we talk about is the first generation builds it, the second generation, how's it go?
I forget it. The second generation, what?
I think it's grows it, and then
the third generation
basically destroys
buries
it.
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah. And I forget what the statistics are, but it's over 90% of businesses do not survive the third generation. And I don't know if that's the third generation's fault. I think it's business models get old.
Yeah, business models get old. It's very, very hard to achieve success for a long time period. I mean, we're sitting in front of the Transworld 40th anniversary sign. We're now in our 41st year,
right,
which is an incredible achievement. I mean, for businesses to make it this long and into third generations, you're talking about approaching 100 years sometimes.
Right.
It's very, very difficult to do.
Yeah, my family's guitar business, Favilla, lasted from 1890 to approximately 1980, about 90 years, made it through 2 generations. But there was a lot of mess. I wrote a book about it on Amazon. If you want to help me make $2 a month from my Amazon royalties, I think I made $15 last year. But
it's a great story.
It's a nice story. And if you're a guitar collector, that's what we wrote it for, and a little bit of family legacy. But it didn't survive the second generation because of the business model. I mean, the Japanese were jumping into the guitar business, make wonderful guitars. The wood supply was drying up. The Beatles and the British invasion had come to America, and Leo Fender and Gibson had come out with the Les Paul guitar and really kind of undercut the folk guitar business. And my family was there flat-footed, not ready to make electric guitars, not ready to deal with the supply issues, and certainly not ready to compete with Japan. And all those things combined just kind of ended it.
Yeah, well, it happens. And this is not a U.S. thing, and it's not a U.S. show. We actually have Michael Ziff from the U.K. too, talking about their family business and the transition, but very large family business in the shoe industry. And Andy, you interviewed him.
Yeah, Stylo shoes. They were before World War II. In England, grew it from literally a single store to hundreds of stores. He tells the story well. Eventually picked up brands like Buster Brown and some other things. And he talks about being involved in the family business. And what happens in some of these family businesses that grow very large, and you'll hear this from Michael, is that family members get jobs. And they might have jobs that they're not really, or they get overpaid. And we had that with another business that Tom Jones handled in the marine industry. There was 3 siblings, and one of the siblings was basically home and making $250,000 a year. Well, guess what he wanted to do? He didn't want to sell the business. Yeah. He's making $250,000. And then there was a 70-year-old sister who was running the business every single day. And she's like, I want out. And at the end, the brother pulled the rug on the whole thing. They wound up not going to the closing table. Complete meltdown of a deal. We jump in. We interview the family members. We basically send a strong letter to that family member saying, you're hurting your own family. They want to retire. And a month later, they called us and did the deal. But it does get ugly, but we're here to help you. Call us in. We could be the bad guys. We could be the good guys. And in the truest sense of the word, Transworld is an intermediary for these things.
Right. And I mean, at the end of the day, having a third party involved in any type of family decision that involves money, that involves business is a good idea. So if you're sitting in a family business, which I'm sure if you're listening to the show, most of you are. I mean, as Andy said, he's been in a family business. I'm building a family business. We all have the personal experience, but we hope you get some takeaways out of the stories today for our listeners. And if you have any questions, we are here to help.
We are here to help. It's going to be a great show.
Transworld Business Advisors is the world's largest business brokerage and mergers and acquisitions firm with over 500 brokers in nearly 200 offices worldwide. Transworld's team handles thousands of business sales every year. To be connected with a qualified business broker or learn more about the buying and selling process, visit tworld.com/the deal board or call 888-719-9098.
Hey everybody, we're back, and I have a very special guest, Aaron Fox, and we are talking about family transfers of businesses and whether or not kids should buy their or go into their family business. And Aaron has a background in it. Aaron's parents had a business, and it's just not sometimes the best fit, and we see this happen a lot in transactions. So, Aaron, welcome. Let's jump into the subject. Why don't you tell a little bit about your story?
Hi, Andy. Thanks. Excited to talk about it a little bit. It's family businesses are one of those really fun things that we all grow to love. And just to kind of clarify a little bit, I would have been third generation in a family business.
Wow.
So the writing was kind of on the wall of, hey, we've got 110 years operations. Your destiny is predetermined. And I had other ideas, and it involved getting out and running for the hills.
Yeah, well, we see that a lot. I mean, we've handled a lot of family businesses that they just really didn't want to. They didn't want to pass it along, or they didn't think the kids would do well, and that's certainly a danger, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's there's a lot of relationships that are at stake, and there's that whole family legacy that's attached to it. There's a ton of pressure, and quite frankly, looking at it, and you're looking at 110-year-old family business, I was kind of step back and is it going the right direction? I undoubtedly was qualified. I undoubtedly had the experience. I undoubtedly had the relationships with suppliers that I could keep it going just like it was at a status quo. But was that really what the goal was? Was the goal, you want to see your business is growing or it's dying? So would I come in with the vim and vigor that was going to take it to that next level?
Yeah, certainly, people are very successful and sometimes multi-generational family businesses, but we certainly see a lot of businesses die in the third generation, and we'll pull some statistics and talk about it at the beginning, talk about it later on. But, one of the things is the owners don't really get the exit that they want. So the departing generation wants their money sometimes.
Yeah.
If they didn't make it along the way.
No, and that honestly brings up a great point. When we were looking at it, and we were, looking at family that was getting to that point that they wanted to retire, I'll be honest, I was fairly ignorant to the acquisition process. And I looked at it, and my family was looking at it as, okay, you take over this business and you basically pay me a pension. And that's how we were looking at it. Well, I didn't know if that was best for everybody.
Right.
Looking back at it, looking back at the business, you have these opportunities now. I mean, heck, if I had known then what I know now, you could have had a lot more fun with it. But you don't realize that there are these financing opportunities that you can help, and you can work with a business broker or business coach to actually structure something that would be a buyout situation where the family would actually go away, which is the main detriment to why you don't want a family business. Or you could, do something else where you build it up, put a little bit more capital into it, modernize some of the processes, and get it really ramped up and ready for an acquisition.
Right. And we've talked about this a lot. Again, it's kind of stepping back and seeing if the kids are the right, fit for the business, and they might not have the profile to buy the business. It's about the finances and what, the expectations of the parting generation is. And sometimes, as you and I know now, being in this business for years, the first time the seller comes to the table, they have an inflated value of what their business is. And I've seen that happen. I saw a young woman buy a business from her father and really overpaid. And then she wanted to move on and start a family, and she couldn't sell it for what she had bought it for. So that's certainly hard feelings. And then, like we said, but if somebody does want to sell to the younger generation, Transworld can help you there too. We have that expertise.
Oh, absolutely. And it's it makes the whole transaction a lot more interesting and a lot more business-like when you actually have that third party that's involved in it, that's, not a known partner to the business or to the family. You've got your great relationships with accountants, you've got your great relationships with attorneys that you've used. Bringing in this new semi-neutral group that's kind of looking at how to help you structure the deal, how to help make sure that the ownership transition goes through, it's a great discussion point, and sometimes it opens some real eyes with who is actually going to be in control after the business is sold.
Yeah, we've been in some meetings where it was literally disclosed at the meeting that all of a sudden the kid piped up and says, "Really, I don't want this business. Mom and Dad, if you feel that you can sell this business for what the business broker's telling you, do it. And I want to move on and do something else." And we've seen that a few times in our history. But what we try to do at Transworld is, first we'll value the business and give everybody an expectation what the marketplace would bring, and then it's up to the family whether or not they want to sell it to the kids and whether or not there's financing available, or if they're going to provide the seller financing or earn out, and and see if the kids have the aptitude and the attitude and the willingness to move forward. But sounds like you made the right decision.
Oh, without question. I looked at what we did with the business, where it's at now. Everyone's happy. The business is very, 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 very strong, still operating strong, still has huge market presence. My dad has his shiny convertible that he races around in and makes a lot of noise in.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, again, we are good deals for good people, and sometimes the good people aren't in the business, and it's not right to sell the business to kids. And we have some other stories coming up here on this episode that I think will be eye-opening to people who want to consider a family transfer. And if somebody wanted to talk to you, either the parents or the children or the generational kids wanted to talk to you about family transfers, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I love my cell phone. Pick up the phone. Let's talk.
Yeah.
781-773-8922.
Great. Aaron, thanks so much for being on today.
Thanks, Andy.
Hey, Andy, do you know what time it is? It's time for our deal of the week.
Deal of the week. Sold.
Welcome back, everybody. And today we're talking about family businesses and family business transitions. And we have a special guest with us, Peter Berg, and he's with Transworld Business Advisors in Fort Lauderdale. And he's got a great deal of the week story to tell us about family business transfers, right?
Thank you, Jess. Yeah, I've got an interesting story. It goes back about 10 years or so. And it was a large transaction, company doing, north of 60 million in revenue, and quite valuable. And I met with the owners, a lovely couple in their mid-70s. They had started the company maybe 40 years prior. And they had four grown children in the business, including a 50-year-old son who was the president of the company. And then a couple of kids in their 40s, and then a daughter 37. They all were executives. They ran marketing, they ran logistics. One was, in another executive position, and then the president. I sat with the parents, and they said to me, very important, our kids cannot know that this business is for sale.
Sets up for an interesting dynamic moving forward.
Absolutely. Now, I got the engagement and started marketing the business. Spent 3 or 4 months packaging and marketing the business, and got a buyer. And we're talking about, a large transaction. At the time, it was, it actually had the record. It closed in 2007. It had the record until last year as the number one commission in the history of Transworld Florida. Mm-hmm. So somebody broke my record. So I'm looking to
regain that record. Yeah.
The record. But so it has a good ending, the story. However, I couldn't let the kids know. Now I have to be at the business. They had to do a full audit. There was a lot of stuff going on. And I was there, and I was dressed in a shirt with a tie, not a jacket, but a tie. And my cover story was that I was an insurance agent.
Mm-hmm.
So the family introduced me in the beginning of the process as an insurance agent. And I was there, nobody bothered me. One day I show up, and there had been a horrific storm.
Oh no.
At one of these really bad storms where it rains 7 inches in 2 hours and it breaks all records and the streets are all flooded. And I show up, and one of the brothers, not the one who's the CEO, but like the next in charge, he's like executive vice president. He grabs me by the arm. He says, "You need to come with me." And he's taking me into the warehouse. And now they owned the building. It was a 75,000 foot building. 30,000 was refrigerated, 10,000 was frozen.
Yep.
It was a food importing type business, fine foods.
Yep.
And I knew what was happening. So I had time to think.
Yeah.
He takes me, we go through the whole building and down the hallway, and then we go to the warehouse, and we go down the stairs, and we walk into the warehouse, and up on the corner of the warehouse, the roof, there had been a huge hole in the roof, and water was pouring in, and there was this major damage.
Oh no.
Now I'm the insurance guy.
Right. So you're there to solve the problem now.
So I said to him, Bob, let's say Bob, I said, "Look, I'm an actuary, but I will get the claims people on this right away."
Right. Good pivot.
That was a really good pivot.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, I had like 3 or 4 minutes to figure out what the hell am I going to do?
Yeah.
What am I going to say? What the heck am I going to do? Because I know what's happening. It was one of those storms of this, 100-year storms kind of things. And I knew what the problem was. So flash forward now. And of course, it was like I was from Zurich or one of those companies. So sure enough, somebody came and, took care of the problem. Flash forward 2-3 months later, the deal closes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a big deal. This is, big numbers, as big numbers as you get. And there's a meeting, and all of the 4 kids are called into the meeting, along with their spouses.
Oh, wow.
Now, each of the kids owned 2.5%.
Okay. So they're getting something out of the deal.
Yeah. And the parents owned 90%. And they said, and their family attorney was there, like the trust, wills, family attorney, an old guy that's been with the family like 50 years.
Right.
And the transaction attorney that worked on the deal, and I'm there. And they said, hey, it's like, "Hey, Pops, what's up? Why this whole big meeting?"
Yeah.
I said, "Well, first of all, Peter Berg is not
the insurance guy.
agent. He's the business broker, and we've sold the company, and it's done. And the new, here's who the new owners are, and here's the whole story."
Right.
That was a really interesting day.
I'm sure. I mean, you hear a lot about the employees not knowing, right? But it's different versus employees versus children and employees and executives in the business.
But we're talking adult children between the ages of 37 and 50. We're not talking about, college student type children. I get that, right?
Yep.
They don't know one thing or the other about the business. They just know their parents make a bunch of money. They don't really know where it comes from.
Right.
But these are adult children in the business.
Running the business. And it was kept a complete secret for over a year. A complete blindside. But you said it has a good ending, right?
Well, so the good ending, the 2 parts of it. First of all, the transaction closed.
Right.
It was big money, including the sale of the real estate. The timing was early 2007.
So you don't get better timing, honestly, right?
The business, they were in the business of selling fine foods to white tablecloth restaurants.
Oh, so really good timing, considering what's going to happen 2 years later.
Like stuff that the chef uses in the back, not stuff that's on the table, but stuff that is used in the cooking of the ingredient, of the meals. Well, within a year, the value of the real estate, within say 18 months, the value of the real estate was probably half of what we got for it.
Mm-hmm.
And the value of the business was, it went from making millions to not making anything because all the customers were fine dining restaurants. Well, you go back to 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
Nobody was going
No.
to those restaurants.
No, it was really hard, especially in South Florida. I mean, it was a very hard hit area.
Right. Now the buyer was $1 billion company. So the buyer had the wherewithal to survive the recession and come out strong.
Right.
So the value of their asset dropped, but the business.
But over
viable.
time.
Yeah. This is now 12, 13, the business is better than ever.
Right.
But for the sellers, the timing was perfect. So you never know. We're in a good market right now, but you don't know when the good times are going to end.
Such a good point.
Looking back, you can say that they, within 3 months, because really the summer of 2007 was the peak and then it went down. The stock market went from 14 to 6 over the next 18 months.
Yep.
So you never know where you're going to be. We got, the markets are good now. Everything is good now. And so if you bring a good offer to your sellers, remember this story. Not so much, the dynamics of keeping it from the family are interesting.
Right.
But the timing of the sale was perfect.
Right.
I'd like to take credit for that, but it was perfect.
Yeah. This is a great story, Peter, and thank you for sharing it. You're right. It's interesting with the family dynamic, but I think the major lesson out of that is, sell not at the top, but as close to it as you can. You never know where the top is, right? But right now we're pretty darn close.
Yeah, we're coming off. It's been a 10-year expansion, and the expansions don't last forever. Mm-hmm. And if your seller, in this case, they were 75. So the thing was, if they had had to wait until 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, I was say pretty much now.
Yeah, but they're 82, 83.
Yeah.
One of them had health issues. So they couldn't wait.
No.
And so if you miss the market, now, if you're 60 years old and you miss the market, okay.
You've got time to recover for another cycle, hopefully.
But if you're in, your mid 70s, you got a health issue, it's time to go. It's time to go.
It's time to go. Well, thank you so much, Peter, for coming on the show and sharing. Peter specializes in some of the larger transactions. He's been with Transworld for a very long time.
My 20th year.
20th year? Congratulations. But if anyone wants to chat with you further, Peter, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, they can reach me by email at pberg@transworldma.com, or that's probably the best.
All right. And we'll drop that into the show notes. Thank you again, Peter, and thanks for sharing.
Okay, Jess, thanks.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And we are talking about family business. And there's no one better to talk about family business than Michael Ziff. Michael's family had a very large business in the UK, and I will let him tell the story. I happen to have read the book about his father, and so I know a lot about it, or it's sometimes I think more than your kids, Michael. But welcome, Michael, back to this show, and let's talk about your family's business a little bit.
So our business started in just after the First World War. It was started by my great-grandfather and great-aunt, and they grew the business with their brothers and sisters. They had come from Eastern Europe at the back end of the previous century, and they set up a footwear business. It was called Stylo, and it grew up until the start of the Second World War, when they had about 130 stores. They were selling shoes mainly and fashion products around fashion accessories. At the end of the Second World War, they'd lost about half the chain due to the bombing, and about 1948, the next generation started to come into the business, which would have included my dad and his brothers and his cousins, and they then grew the business to the early 60s, when they had built up to about 180 shops. And at that time, there was mergers going on in the shoe industry, and the biggest chain that was being created was a company called Sears that owned British Shoe Corporation, that owned some very famous brands, Saxo, Dulcis amongst those. And it was run by a guy called Sir Charlie Claw. He also owned Selfridges, William Hill. He owned jointly the Pan American building with a guy called Jack Cotton in New York. So he was a very famous entrepreneur, and he was our major competitor. And he was after a company called Barrett Shoes, which my father also went after, and we bought that business. And that took us up to about 300 shops. And then we, over the next period, from 1964, they also had factories as well, and they had a children's wear business, which we sold to Mothercare. They had a toy business, which I'm not sure what happened with that, but it was a rag bag of businesses, which they then sort of whittled down just back to the shoe business, and they kept the 250 best shops. And it was generally went along pretty well until the early 80s, by which time
you were in it.
I was then in the business. And we faced a very difficult period in the early 80s where we were running three businesses, Barrett's, Stylo, and a discount business called Valdis. Equivalent here would have been Payless. And they were all run by different members of the family, all in three different places, whereas our competitors were running 3 different brands, 6 different brands, 10 different brands, all operating in one warehouse and one distribution business, whereas we had the overheads of 3. And it was plainly obvious when I joined the business that the only thing we should be doing is knocking heads together and coming under one roof. And now to do that in a family business where each person was their own boss and had their own team of people wasn't going to be the happiest thing for everybody.
Right.
But we bought a new warehouse in Bradford. We gradually got everybody to agree that it would be best to centralize it. And period from about 1987, when we got going, through till 1996, and there was a big recession in 91, 92, we really sort of started to take off and the business started to grow. And by the time we got to 96, we'd got up to about 500 shops. We ran one business, Barrett's. We closed all the periphery businesses down. We then bought another business called Bacon Shoes, which for a group of Jewish guys wasn't necessarily a very kosher business. We changed that to Priceless, and we modeled it on Payless, interesting. And we then started to grow the two businesses. And in 96, British Shoe Corporation came to us and asked us, would we like to consider buying their business? So the great mighty British Shoe, which was 10 times our size, had gone through a difficult period. We'd grown, and all of a sudden, there was a big opportunity. And we bought, at that time, a brand called Hush Puppy, which is obviously well known, Saxo and Dulcis, and we merged them into Barrett's, and we then started to run and grow the business. And we also had a sports business at that time. So by the time we got towards the late 90s, we had about 1,000 shops. We were turning over 250 million pounds. Our peak year, we'd made about 12, 13 million pounds. We'd been generally pretty profitable. And we then started to face some very difficult situation. All of a sudden, this very large business, which we had become, had a lot of family in the business still, some of whom were getting on in life, and we needed to consider bringing professionals in. They didn't want to. And in 2000, we got an offer for the business, and I actually wanted to take the offer.
Right.
My father, who his immediate reaction was, you've got a brother who's running, we had a real estate business as well, which is a family business. And his view was that we shouldn't be selling it. I had 3 sons. I said to him, they don't want to come into the business. they won't want to come into the business. He said, how do you know? I said, well, because they shouldn't be coming in to the family business. Enough with the family business. He didn't agree. We also had a particular type of share called voting shares. And he said, if I wanted to give up my voting shares, the person who does it, basically, it's all in. The way it worked was everybody was in or everybody was out. But you couldn't start dipping in and out. And unfortunately, we didn't proceed with the offer. And over the next 10 years, whilst we kept the business going, it became a very, very tough ground, a battleground. The barrier for entry became easier and easier for people.
Right.
More people were opening up. It's not the case now. And by the time we got to 2008-9, we had a business which had a lot of debt. In 2001, our debt had been about £80 million, which was serious money.
Yeah.
And the problem at that point in time for a family business was not only us, but it was a bank's problem as well.
Right.
By the time we got to 2008, the debt was down to £3 million of bank loan and a 30 million debenture. So it had come right down.
Nice.
At that point, the problem wasn't the bank's problem. The problem was our problem.
Uh-huh.
And banks, in true base, that decided enough's enough, and it was time for change. And they pulled the cord on us. The marketplace, as we know, in 2008 also
changed.
Difficult, changed. We had a debenture which had very complicated funding around it. And we then went through a period from 2008 to 2013 where it was death by 1,000 cuts. Unfortunately, we decided in 2013 to call it a day. The good news is today I'm the master franchise for Great Britain, selling other businesses. But the experience that I had in the family business makes it very interesting in working with other family businesses and talking to people about selling their business.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you went through it all, right? So you went through two generations. It was your great grandfather, then your father, then you, and you decided, or at least you foresaw, that it was going to be very, very difficult for the fourth generation to jump in, which was very good insight, not only in the personalities, but the size of the business. I mean, at some point, we see this a lot in family businesses. It gets much too large to try to transfer to the next generation.
And there is a feeling in family businesses that they have the God-given right to have positions of authority in the business when they don't necessarily have the experience. And I had that with cousins who were running warehouse, or cousins who thought he could run IT and all the rest of it. They didn't have the experience of many executives today whom we should have employed, who would have run the thing a lot better than we did.
Right. And I did read that in the book, and it certainly seemed very complicated. Again, once the business gets that large and that many family people get in, obviously someone's not going to be up to their task or up to their position, and the business is going to suffer. And it sounded like you did a good job of taking it all the way through, and, outside forces and outside marketplace changes, which is another reason why people might want to sell when the going's good.
I mean, our real estate business is a family business. It's amusing you ask this question because my brother's here with me. We didn't plan to be together, and we were having virtually this conversation yesterday afternoon outside Starbucks in Aventura about the next generation and what happens with shares, and where shares get passed down to the next generation, to family members who don't even live in the same country and don't even understand what the business is about. And there's no allegiance and no wish for them to have any interest in that business. They get a dividend, but they don't have a long-term view about keeping an interest in the business because their interest is completely different.
Right. And so you're going to have to decide whether or not to actually try to force the issue and try to pass down those shares, or, cash out.
Yeah.
And so a lot of families come to that. And obviously Michael is very well versed at understanding family dynamics and understanding a large family business. We have a lot of people at Transworld like that, and we're here to help you.
The big area where we can help people, I believe, is family conflict. Because in family businesses, you do get this whole area of conflict. And probably the best way around of dealing with this is the sale of the business in many of the cases. And whilst people at the beginning may say, no, it's not, reality of it is, too often businesses struggle because members of the family get involved into internecine war and they take their eye off the ball and they're not running the business.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot, and we have some good examples of that. Michael, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you to talk about their family business?
So my email address is mziff@tworlduk.com.
Great. Thanks so much for coming on the show and telling your family story. It's an incredible story.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Jessica, you know what time it is?
Money time?
Almost. It's time for Listing of the Week.
Welcome back, everybody. And today for our listing of the week, Melissa Patel from Transworld Business Advisors of DC Metro is joining me. She's our managing partner there. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for having me.
Great. So tell me a little bit, you have a great listing for sale. Tell us a little bit about this business.
We do. It's an optometric practice. What's unique about it that it only serves high-end clients. So they have really nice frames. The build out is beautiful. The owner has been there for the last 16 years. He really knows a lot of the doctors in the area. They refer a ton of business to him, and he's been able to really make a good living for himself. He's not an optometrist. He hires an optometrist and they come in a few times a week. So he's really the front office. It's truly a retail business that he's built there, and he's done very well for himself there.
That's great. Sounds like a really good practice. But what we were talking about earlier is there's actually a lot of opportunity in this industry for buyers that are looking to make an acquisition, right?
Absolutely. So optometry is a very fragmented market, fragmented industry, if you will. There are a lot of independent owners, small businesses that really thrive within the industry, even though there's some large, lens crafters, Mr. Eye Doctor, but, patients are still willing to support the local business owner on the smaller optometry practices. So it's still a great business and a great industry to be in for solo entrepreneurs.
That's great. So tell us a little bit about the numbers for this specific listing. What is the business listed for and what is the SDE?
Sure. The business is listed for $270,000. The owner has put in some new equipment in there. So it's a great price. It's a great price point, especially with the trade tariffs and everything coming through. His SDE for the business is around $125,000, and sales he's been doing consistently about $275,000 a year.
Awesome. Great. So right about that 2 times earnings, like we talk about on a lot of valuations. Yeah. Well, Melissa, it sounds like a good listing. If someone is interested in talking to you about purchasing this practice or even working with you on another business sale in the DC area, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure. They could call me at 202-800-4060 or shoot me an email at Melissa, melissa.patel@tworld.com.
Great. And we'll drop that information into the show notes for the listeners as well. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends on social media. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcasting app. If you have questions, would like to appear, or have suggestions for topics for the show, get in contact with us through our website, thedealboardpodcast.com.